Hi, my name is Beth, and you're listening to the Canna Fitness and Nutrition Podcast, where we are hanging out at the intersection of fitness, nutrition, and cannabis. Thank you so much for pressing play today. I'm excited that you're here because you're interested in using cannabis for your health and fitness. And if you're new here, then welcome. If you're joining me again, then thanks for coming back. I think today's going to be interesting because we're specifically going to talk about how much to use. Right? Proper dosing and how much to use. When we're using cannabis intentionally, which is the goal of this podcast and the goal when we're using it for our fitness and for our health, we have an agenda. We're trying to overcome specific obstacles, right? Or get into the right zone or mode for what we want to do, right? So either you want to overcome, maybe sleep or pain. That would be a specific agenda where you would want some intention in your cannabis. And if you want to get into the right zone for, say, stretching, right, that's going to take a specific amount of cannabis. Whereas when you're just looking to, quote unquote, party or maybe just watch a movie, right? It's easier to just be a little more loosey-goosey with how much you're taking because there's no set agenda, right? The agenda is just to chill. And you, again, using your own monitoring system can find the right dose for you to get into that vibe. But when we're using it intentionally for fitness, so if you want to use it to go work out, then you don't want to have too much. Because if you have too much, then you might lose the motivation, right? So, for example, cannabis can be great for energy to get you energized and psyched up to work out, and it can increase your focus during your workout. It can increase your mind-body connection during your workout, but only if you don't take it too far. If you take it to the level that you like to be at when you do watch a movie, where you're a little bit zoned, then you might miss the benefit of doing your workout with it. You see what I'm saying? So you can get a lot out of using cannabis for these specific things like working out, stretching, creativity, writing, journaling, being productive at work. But that takes a specific dose. Whereas if you just want to chill with your friends and laugh and have a good time, that's a different amount. So I guess what I'm saying is my point I'm trying to be clear is that when we're using it intentionally, most of the time, less is more. And then when we're just trying to vibe and chill with our friends and there's not a specific intention other than relaxing, it's okay. It's more okay to use more. Does that make sense? Okay. So anyway, so as always, when I talk about cannabis, I'm talking about all parts of the plant. And the two main parts of the plant that we talk about are THC, which is the part that makes you high, and CBD, which is the part of the same plant that does not make you high. And as always, I'll be kind of flip-flopping between them, but I'll be as clear as I can about what to use for which obstacle. So we're going to go through some of the main reasons that we use cannabis for our health and fitness. And I'm going to talk about optimal dosing for each thing. But here's the thing. I'm going to give you suggestions and some generalities, but it's really up to you and your body. And honestly, this is one of the things I love about it, is because it forces me to really pay attention to what I'm doing, right? It's not mindless at all, because if it is mindless, then I end up completely stoned and then I'm like basically useless, right? If I'm mindless, if I'm mindful, then I am super productive and it is super helpful. So I try daily to be really mindful and intentional about cannabis because I get all the benefits without losing myself to it. So in other words, in this scenario, we're not using it to numb out, right? We're not using it in place of alcohol to numb out or in place of another another tool to just numb out, right? Just because it's healthier doesn't mean that we can still numb out with it. We really need to be intentional, especially if you want it to help your health and fitness. So let me give you some real examples. Let's talk about anxiety. Okay, this is actually how I started using cannabis. I started using it for anxiety, and I found that a very small amount of THC really just took the edge off. And so this is a great example of when less is more with THC specifically, because too much THC can cause anxiety. And I know that many, maybe even many of you, but I know many people experience this. And this is one of the kind of big mistakes that happens more often than I'd like. So I'm going to give you, this is why I'm doing this. It's because I want you to know that if you take too much, you're going to have anxiety. You are putting yourself at risk for having anxiety. So people that come to me and say that it made them anxious the first time they tried it, or the only time they tried it made them feel anxious and no, they won't try it again, which is frustrating because it just means they took too much. You took too much. If you feel anxious, it's too much. Less is more. Less is more when it comes to anxiety and using cannabis for anxiety. Now, I'm going to go out and say that the same is true for CBD. If you're prone to anxiety, I would start with a very small amount of even CBD just to see how you feel, because a small amount might be enough to take the edge off for your anxiety. Now, I got really into CBD in my journey, and I decided that that was the most effective for my daily anxiety. And I have had to increase the dose because a little bit wasn't enough to make me feel better. But again, this is CBD, it's non-intoxicating, so I'm not feeling any intoxication or really anything different. It's the absence of the anxiety that helps, right? So I take about 30 milligrams of that, and studies show, now there's limited research out there on this, which is why I love to do this so that you can know. Studies show that generally higher doses of CBD are more effective because it is not that it's less potent, but there's less of a feeling to it. It's taking away. So it's the absence of the anxiety that you'll notice. And again, generally higher doses are helpful, but in this case, because THC can cause anxiety, less is more. And always start low on the CBD side. So that's anxiety. When we're talking about pain, now pain, again, less is more with pain because, again, you want that small dose of THC to kind of just take the edge off. So you could get away with a microdose, 2.5, 5 milligrams of THC is often enough to just alleviate that pain, right? Now you're going to have to feel your body. And if that doesn't cut it, then you're going to have to step it up, right? I would say the more intense and chronic your pain is, the higher the dose. But a lot of people, again, in the research, suggest that lower amounts are actually more effective when it comes to pain. And that way, you're also not completely stoned and you can actually relieve your pain and go on with your daily life, right? You can go to work because it's only a couple milligrams. It doesn't affect it doesn't impair you. And so you can go on with your daily life, you can drive, and that takes the edge off of the pain. Now, I would also pair your THC with CBD when you're using it for pain, because CBD reduces inflammation. So it takes down inflammation, which is going to reduce your pain even more. And if you take CBD and THC together, then you're going to have reduced inflammation and less pain and less high. So that's going to further enable you to go on with your daily life without being impaired from the THC. So I should take a second here and be clear that I'm talking about all forms of consumption today with dosing. I'm talking about all forms because at the end of the day, dosing is really similar no matter if you're taking an edible, a tincture, or if you're inhaling. If you're inhaling, it can be a little bit more challenging to find a combo dose or to dose it yourself unless you are making your own. So if you are using a dry herb vape like I do, you can adjust how much is in your capsule or in your vape. You can add different types of flower together, which I love to do. I love to put my CBG flower and my THC flower together. You can adjust it that way. If you're talking about a gummy, then you're looking at reading the package labels, knowing how much is in each gummy, and then adjusting your dose accordingly. So taking a quarter, taking a half, taking 1.5, really working on the precise dosing. And if you're using a tincture, then you are going to use a dropper, and you're going to, look at the package, see how much is in a dropper full, and then adjust. You might need a quarter of a dropper. You might need a half a dropper. You might need a full dropper. But whatever you need, that's your dosing. So we're talking about all forms here. Another side note on pain. Pain can be treated with topicals. Topicals are great. Again, I would look for a combination of CBD and THC. You don't have to worry about the impairment because the THC can't get to your brain to make you high through the skin, but it can reduce your inflammation and ease the pain sensations. And typically, when you're looking for a combination of CBD or even just a CBD itself, because again, that's the inflammation reducer, then a higher dose is actually better because again, it has to get through some layers, right? And through your skin to get there. So high doses are often really effective when you're using it externally for pain. Okay. Focus and creativity. Now here's one. I feel like I have a lot of experiences with this one because I love to use THC for focus and creativity. If I have to write or, businessy stuff where I have to write social media posts and emails and things, it's a way easier if I've had some THC. But it's way easier if I've had a little bit of THC. If I've had too much THC, then I am past the point of wanting to do that, and I have completely zoned into probably shopping online, right? Instead of zoning in on my work. So focusing creativity, typically small amounts are better. And I would, again, start with a quarter of a gummy, see how that feels. Start with one puff and just see how that feels. Set it aside and then come back to it if you want to. Start small. Here's the other thing too, is if you do take too much and you really had wanted to sit down and write that email, then you took too much, and so now you're zoned out and you're zoned into, shopping online like I get, and you can always take some CBD and that will help level you back down. So it's a matter of adjusting, right? Starting small with your dose and adjusting as needed. My friend works for Lion's Mane here in New York, and it's a New York-based brand, but they have a product that I'm super excited about, and this is not even like a paid plug. I just thought it was interesting. They have a product called Emergent CBD. Emergent CBD. I love it because they're marketing it as when you take too much THC, take this CBD and it'll bring you back down, which is amazing. And talk about, for anybody, anytime, of course, it can be uncomfortable to be too high. I mean, we've all been there. Or typically you had that experience at some point, but it's not, you can't get sick, you're not going to die, you can't overdose, but it can be uncomfortable. And especially if you were planning on doing something for yourself, health and fitness wise, if you were planning on going to work out, then you might want to come back down. So taking something like CBD or even a product that's formulated like this Emergent CBD, then I think that's really cool. Let's talk about sleep, because sleep is one of the biggest things I see as a benefit for our health and fitness. Because if you're not sleeping, you're not working out. Like, you just don't want to, you don't have the energy, you don't have the motivation. And quite frankly, your body needs the sleep more than it needs to work out. Because if your body's really stressed out if you're not sleeping, and if you add more stress, even good stress like workouts, it just makes your body more stressed. It just, it increases your cortisol, and it keeps your nervous system dysregulated, so you don't want to stay in that zone very long. So sleeping is key. Most of my clients, if they're not sleeping, we work on that first. But again, low dose. Less is more when it comes to sleep. Besides, the goal is to go to sleep and stay asleep. The goal isn't to chill and watch a movie or party with your friends. You can be zoned, but your chances are you're just going to fall asleep, and you won't notice if you do feel a little high. But again, microdosing is really effective for sleep. Taking the 5 milligrams before bed of THC. And then again, adding on to that, another 5 milligrams of CBD is going to help you stay asleep. And then just from there, it's just listening to your body. Okay, so maybe that was enough to fall asleep, but not enough to stay asleep. Okay, so let's keep the 5 milligrams of THC, but maybe let's add 10 milligrams of CBD and help you stay asleep longer, right? So dosing matters, and knowing what you're using it for matters. The THC helps you fall asleep, and the CBD helps you stay asleep. But starting light, starting low is always the way to go. Less is more. Now, this is something to think about too. Less is more because you don't want to increase your tolerance quickly. You want to slowly, you're going to build a tolerance, just like we build tolerance to Advil and, all the different things, anything you put into your body, right? But you want to build that slowly. So you want to increase it slowly, because using as little as possible, because if you start using 50 milligrams right out the window, you're going to get used to that. And then you're going to start needing 60 and 70 and 80. And now you're spending all of your money on weed, right? And that's no fun. So think of it in terms of really keeping that tolerance low as well. And again, there's very limited research, but the research that is out there is people are saying and showing that they're getting so much more out of smaller doses, calling it that sweet spot where you have the amount that relieves whatever you need, relieves anxiety, relieves your pain, helps you sleep, helps you zone into your workout, but not so much that you are unable to focus on your workout or get through it, or if you're going to fall asleep, if you like indicas, right? If you take too much of an indica, you're going to fall asleep. So then that defeats the purpose of, laying down to stretch. If you just sleep, you're not going to get the stretch, right? So less is more, and finding that sweet spot when it comes to using it for your health and fitness and being productive and getting through, let's talk about healthy habits for a second. It can be really helpful to have a little bit of THC or a combo CBD or even CBG in this case, and to help you get through some of those chores that we don't love, right? A little bit of meal planning, a little bit of meal prep, helping you focus on that can be really a game changer, because I don't know about you, but I sort of dread having to cut up my chicken and cook a few pieces at a time, and having to make sure I have all my salad stuff and make sure I have all the things for the week. It just gets kind of annoying, I love what I eat, and I love healthy food, and I love how I feel. But I bought a watermelon. Now I have to cut it. And I'm not super excited about cutting up a watermelon, but it's a lot more manageable if I can zone in and, have some THC and some CBG. Just makes it a little more tolerable, let's say. And if you're someone who needs to meal plan and plan out your week for what you're going to eat, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, again, that can be a little tedious and it's easy to get sidetracked, right? Tell me about how easy it is to get sidetracked when you're trying to plan out what you want to eat, right? You go down a rabbit hole and suddenly you have made yourself reservations at a restaurant because you want something to eat. So, having a little bit of THC or a combo CBD can help you really focus and zone in on the meal planning, right? And then just a note too, if you're newer to cannabis, you definitely want to start low and go slow because your body's not used to it. And if your body's not used to it, then you don't know how you're going to feel. And it's just way better to have limited feeling and a limited experience than to have an overboard experience, because you can always add more and take more tomorrow and try it again, but it really sucks to be uncomfortable. Again, you can quote unquote undo your high by taking CBD, but it's just why go through the discomfort if you don't have to, right? So all in all, today, I just wanted to point out a few ways that less is more when it comes to cannabis, and that dosing is really important. And that at the end of the day, it's really important for you to listen to your body. So be keeping track of how much you're using. Be keeping track if you're taking half of a gummy or half of a tincture dropper, or if you're only taking 1 or 2 puffs at a time. Try that less is more approach and see if that doesn't help you zone in to your workouts, to your meal prep and planning, to your sleep, your focus, your pain, and then slowly step up from there. So I hope that was helpful. As always, if you want personalized information, just send me an email. I'd be happy to help you with whatever scenario you're working with. You can email me. It's beth@cannafitnessnutrition.com. You can reach me on Instagram where I hang out. That's Beth_cannafitnessnutrition. And feel free to like and rate the podcast, because apparently that's how it helps other people know that it's there. And share it if you feel that this would help someone else you know. And with that, I thank you, and I'll see you next time.